We really are seeing many truly powerful UAP whistleblowers. I'm looking forward to diving into what they have to say because it's important. We seem to be moving into a higher gear in terms of revelations coming out to us. I think we have passed the era when skeptics could, I just have to say this, arrogantly dismiss such claims with a wave of the hand and get away with it. I don't think that's so easy for them to do any longer, at least so it seems to me. Before diving in, though, I think it's good to remember that there have been many whistleblowers in the UFO field for many years. In earlier decades, though, they would typically speak to some isolated researcher, and they were all pretty much isolated back then, who would then usually just write their story down and then publish it, usually in some UFO journal that had a maximum distribution of 1,000 or 2,000 copies, and sometimes less than that. Half a century ago, Leonard Stringfield was interviewing dozens of these people, actually maybe even close to 100 as far as I can tell. You can read all of those accounts, by the way, but for all intents and purposes, they have been long forgotten. A couple of researchers dive into it, but most of us are just unaware. Stringfield started interviewing military insiders about UFOs and aliens during the 1970s, and he kept doing this until his death in 1994. And again, I think about 100 of these people were interviewed by him. His research, again, it's available in book form, which basically means very few people are aware of it. But when you boil it all down, you get an incredibly powerful story. Multiple UFO crash retrievals. He collected evidence for several dozen UFO crash retrievals, many of these sources providing detailed information about the recovery of specific alien craft and or bodies. Several witnesses, including a number of military personnel, claim to have seen alien bodies stored at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, that's U.S. Air Force headquarters in Dayton, Ohio. Often describe them as small humanoids around 4 feet tall with large heads. By the way, that drawing there, it was Stringfield's drawing based on detailed information he got from a doctor who told him about an autopsy, you can believe it or not, that he had done on an alien being. Stringfield met with this doctor, had some very detailed conversations with him, drew the image based on that. The doctor looked it over. He says, yeah, that's basically about right. So take it for what you will. They talked about sophisticated alien technology, artifacts that were just well beyond our capabilities at the time. Definite, strong connection to military involvement in recovering and studying these UFOs and these objects with a high level of consistency. This must be said. Despite coming from various sources, those witness accounts contained consistent details about the appearance of the alien beings, the alien craft. I think it lended a lot of credibility to what Stringfield had to say. So now we're in a new era. The people who are coming out now, they're starting anyway to get the attention I think they deserve. Because, look, after all, if they are telling the truth, we need to know. And if they aren't, well, at least we can have a public conversation to examine their claims and make our own decisions. So the first one I want to talk about is Randy Anderson. He appeared on the excellent channel of Jesse Michels. Really fascinating interview. I'll have it linked below. Do check it out if you've missed it. It's gotten a lot of views already. Randy Anderson was a Green Beret, completed Special Forces qualification courses. He was an 18 Bravo Special Forces Weapons Sergeant. Speaks a couple of different languages, including Indonesian and Malaysian. And he's currently got a company that teaches survival skills and weapons training. But in his interview with Jesse, he had a lot of very important claims here. So some had to do with Area 51. While working there, which he calls the test site or the test range, he witnessed a green orb-like object fly over. I have to tell you, in my own personal research on this, I cannot tell you how many individuals I've spoken to who describe orbs in some capacity or another. And when you go through UFO literature and research, you find orbs being described frequently. These don't make sense. Some of these orbs just seem like balls of light. Sometimes they seem metallic. But the maneuverability that they have been demonstrating, we're talking decades. I have a personal story from someone who gave it to me from 1965. And I think they're even earlier than that. So anyway, Randy Anderson had one such sighting. He actually spoke about that and said there was someone he was with who reacted, which suggested that this was not an unusual thing that they experienced, but also not something that they were expected to discuss openly. So they all knew about it, but just don't talk about it. He also claimed to have seen a black triangle hovering at Area 51 that he believed employed some kind of electrogravitic propulsion, something exotic, in other words. When he was at the Naval Surface Warfare Center, Crane, in Indiana, he talked about this. This is in March of 2014. This was really quite interesting. So he was taken to there was a secret underground facility there called the Off-World Technology Division. That's what he said. They went through multiple security checkpoints. And he saw actually a sign that said Off-World Technology there. There he observed a metallic basketball-sized sphere levitating above some podium. It had some kind of very unusual, almost unnatural metallic appearance. He couldn't compare it to anything that he had seen before. It was definitely hovering, he said. There was no question about that. There was a definite space between that and the podium. He also saw a strange object. He said it was gauntlet-like, basically like something that you could reach into and put on your arm. He said it had a crystal-like display that was square or rectangular. Very interesting. Above the display, there were hieroglyphic symbols that appeared and changed. It looked like a mirage, he described it. And he was told that this object was recovered from a crashed craft or recovered craft and had discharged energy during the retrieval, possibly harming or maybe even killing someone. And he talked about the other individuals there, the instructors, acted like this was routine. He found that a little unsettling. They discussed the objects among themselves and with Randy and another colleague. I think he indicated they might have been evaluating his reaction to it all. So quite interesting. He had a couple of other interesting things to say in this interview. One relating to drones, since that's in the news currently. He just stated that U.S. drone technology is far more advanced than the public knows. And he mentioned drones being disguised as ordinary objects for surveillance purposes. We've been hearing a little bit about that. Thought that was quite interesting. So he had a lot to say that was quite interesting in that interview. I do encourage you to check it out. I will have the link below. Now, there's another whistleblower, or let's say a knowledgeable insider. I think we can call him a whistleblower. His name is Jake Barber, an Air Force veteran. This has been making a lot of news just in the last couple of days. Ross Coulthart has interviewed this man on NewsNation. And in fact, that interview, Ross has mentioned this, will be aired on NewsNation. They have a TV special called Hunting UFOs, the Crash Retrieval Whistleblower. That will be this Saturday, January 18th at 8 p.m. on NewsNation. Jake Barber is described as a former Tier 1 elite military serviceman. He worked at the highest levels of the U.S. military. Ross emphasized that his credibility has been vouched for by former members of Delta Force, and however they've checked his background, he is the real deal. That is what Ross says. Now, the key points that Jake Barber has to say, this is fascinating. So, he stated he worked on a secret government UFO retrieval program, UAP, UFO. He said he was a helicopter pilot involved in retrieving these objects for the government. He described retrieving an egg-shaped object. It was white, colored white, He got to within 150 feet of it. He said it had no visible propulsion system, no engine, no thermal signature. He observed this using night vision goggles. That's why he said it had no thermal signature. It was clearly extraordinary, clearly anomalous in his view. He stated further that he has known about the non-human origins of these UAP for more than a decade. He stated that his team knew they were dealing with something extraordinary just based on their reactions. And this is, I think, very significant here, that ranking members of the UAP task force, because he spoke with them, confirmed to him that what he and his team retrieved that night was indeed non-human in origin. We do not have details yet as to how that information came to him, but that is what he stated. So again, according to Ross, they've looked into Jake Barber's background. They vetted him. He is the real deal. So I think very, very interesting. And significantly, well, let me just read this one quote of his from, we have a snippet of the interview that he did with Ross. We're going to get the whole thing on Saturday. But there's one thing he said here, which I thought was significant. He says, I will tell you that during this process over the last couple of years, it's been confirmed to me by ranking members of the UAP task force that what we were working with that night was, in fact, an NHI, non-human intelligence, and it was not a unique experience. Not a unique experience. So, a couple of other things we learned. His evidence was apparently presented to the Senate Select Committee for Intelligence. That was the recent UAP task force that they had there. So Congress already has this information. And the other thing that Ross Coulthart indicated is that for the special that they're airing on Saturday, the 18th of January, right before the inauguration of new President Donald Trump, they will not only have the full interview with Jake Barber, but there will be interviews with 3 additional military whistleblowers who will talk about their own knowledge of the program and their personal experiences working on similar operations as with Barber. Apparently, we're being told there will be never before seen video of an alleged craft recovery and information about secret meetings with officials in Washington, D.C. So I think Ross is correct when he says this could be very significant, important implications for the public understanding of UFOs, UAP. Yes, absolutely. I think that's quite right. So we will find more details about that soon enough. Just fascinating. I mean, the speed of these revelations that are coming out now. This is so fast. Everything seems to be speeding up. And by the way, I noticed a very interesting statement by Jeremy Corbet. This has made the rounds in video. I'll link to it below. But Jeremy asserts that the AARO, that's the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, does in fact know the location of crashed craft that have landed and are being worked on. He claims there are high-level witnesses who have testified to AARO about this. I'm guessing there's some decent overlap with what he's got and what NewsNation is going to be presenting, I would assume. Jeremy also said he was personally aware of a location and information that was given directly to the AARO office. He said there was a massive reprisal wave, that's his words, that came after that information was shared, that the former director of AARO, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, was, Jeremy's words, highly aware of some of this technology and where it's located. Apparently this has been circulating around, and that the AARO office just lied about all of this, stating that, no, we have no information about any of this type of information. So this is what Jeremy is saying. I would not dismiss that for a minute. We will, I think we're at a point now where these claims are coming out more and more. It's becoming difficult to ignore, it seems to me. Maybe the establishment will continue to ignore them, but I'm not sure that that's actually a wise bet. We're hearing President-elect Donald Trump talking very explicitly about getting information out on the mystery drones, which, by the way, it seems like that has not gone away either. Maybe we'll come back and talk about that some more, but I think that there's still more drone information that is out, and I don't know if referring to them as drones is all that appropriate. I haven't really felt that from the beginning. There's something much more than just drone-like about these objects. So we'll come back to that. So we're seeing a tremendous amount of insider information coming out. Is it all true? Well, what I can say is that for now, it seems very consistent with what researchers have been learning for a long time, more than 50 years. UFO crash retrieval information involves a lot more than just the Roswell story. That's part of it, yes, but I think there's much, much more to all of that than just Roswell. Some people wonder why advanced aliens would crash their craft so many times. You hear this. Well, I would say, first of all, we don't really know how many have actually crashed. But we also don't know how much traffic is out there. There could be a tremendous amount of traffic for all we know. I think that there is. So maybe the amount of mishaps aren't all that high percentage-wise to begin with. But in certain cases, we hear that the crafts were essentially intact, so maybe they didn't crash anyway. The fact is, there is a lot that we still do not know about how many of these objects have been acquired and what is the actual context of those acquisitions. Some may have crashed. Yeah, maybe. Perhaps they aren't invincible, despite their technology. I would just say, rather than offering abstract theoretical objections to all this, simply because we don't think it makes sense in the context of all that we think we know, maybe it's better just to listen to the facts or the data, to check that data and develop theories on the basis of that. Seems like a more stable foundation on which to develop our knowledge. What it all looks like to me is that there is a substantial presence of some other, I like to say, non-human, that comes from somewhere else. We can fill in the blanks as to where when we get more information. Another planet, another dimension, another time, some combination thereof. Don't know. But we have a government and a military structure that somehow has been dealing with this for a long, long time, and dealing with them as well. For many decades and even generations, UFO researchers have toiled away in the shadows, acquiring that evidence. These are images of a few of them. There's many, many more than these guys. Their reward was being shunned and ridiculed by polite society. Well, for my part, I have to say I'm happy to see them get some vindication, even if posthumously. They deserve it. I think we have some very interesting times ahead. I look forward to coming back and sharing them and discussing it all with you as it happens. Well, that's all I've got for now. Thanks for stopping by. If you like this, please do like and share and subscribe, and visit my site at richardolanmembers.com. That's it for now. Catch you later. Let's keep fighting the good fight.